You think you know the person who always says yes. They are the one who stays late at the office without complaining, the one who picks up the check, and the one who listens to your problems for hours while never mentioning their own. You call them nice, you call them reliable, but you are misidentifying a survival mechanism as a personality trait. In reality, you are looking at a pressurized vessel with a failing valve. True kindness requires the capacity for malice. If you lack the ability to be dangerous, you are not being nice, you are being harmless. There is a massive difference. The harmless person is a victim waiting for a catalyst. The dangerous person who chooses to keep their sword sheathed is the one you should actually fear. This is the psychology of the suppressed shadow. Every time a nice person swallows an insult or ignores a boundary violation, they are not forgiving you. They are feeding a hidden part of their psyche that Carl Jung called the shadow. They are burying their resentment in the basement of their subconscious, and that basement is running out of space. When the nice person finally breaks, they do not just get angry, they undergo a total psychological inversion. The empathy that once made them your greatest ally becomes a weapon. Because they have spent years observing you, they know exactly where your insecurities lie. They know which words will bypass your defenses and which actions will dismantle your life. When the shadow takes the driver's seat, the person you thought you knew vanishes, replaced by a cold, calculating force that feels zero remorse. You pushed a saint until they remembered they were human, and now you have to deal with the monster that was protecting them. Welcome to the Mac Bros. I am Mac, and today we are peeling back the skin on the most misunderstood archetype in social psychology. We are going deep into the mechanics of why the most selfless people often harbor the most lethal potential. We are going to explore why your brain uses niceness as a shield, how your amygdala processes years of unvoiced disrespect, and the specific psychological triggers that turn a pushover into a predator. By the end of this, you will understand the hidden rules of the shadow self and why you should never mistake a lack of conflict for a lack of capability. This is not just a study of others, it is a mirror for yourself. Let us break down the dark side of the nice one. To understand how this transformation happens, you have to look at the first secret of the over-accommodating person, which is hypervigilance. While you are talking, they are scanning. Their brain is not just processing your words. Their amygdala is working overtime to detect shifts in your tone, your micro-expressions, and your body language. This is often born from a past environment where they had to predict the moods of unpredictable people to stay safe. They developed a high degree of what psychologists call theory of mind. This is the ability to understand the mental state of others. In a healthy person, this leads to deep connection. In the nice person, it creates a detailed map of your psychological architecture. They know exactly where you are insecure about your intelligence, your appearance, or your status. They see the tiny flinch you make when someone mentions your family or your past failures. While you see their silence as submission, they are subconsciously cataloging every one of your weaknesses. You are essentially giving a master locksmith the blueprints to your internal vault without even realizing it. The second sign is what is known as social camouflage, or fawning. This is a stress response that goes beyond fight or flight. When a person feels threatened or undervalued, their brain might choose to please the threat instead of fighting it. This creates a massive amount of cognitive dissonance. Their prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and self-control, is forced to constantly suppress their true feelings. This is physically exhausting for the brain. Every time they agree with an opinion they hate or smile at a joke that insults them, they are creating a neurological rift. The default mode network of their brain, which is active when we think about ourselves and others, becomes a battleground. They start to detach from their own identity. This detachment is exactly why they are so lethal when they snap. Because they have spent so much time suppressing their own ego to please you, when the shadow takes over, they no longer feel the normal human constraints of empathy or social consequence. They have disconnected from the self, which means they have also disconnected from the part of them that cares about your pain.
The third reality is the accumulation of microtraumas. You might think that missing a deadline and dumping the work on them is a one-time annoyance. To the nice person, it is a data point.
Their brain processes these slights through the lens of hyperattunement. They do not experience these events in isolation. They see the pattern. While you have forgotten the time you ignored their input in a meeting or the way you spoke down to them in front of the team, their brain has stored these moments in the long-term memory centers. They are building a case. This is why their eventual retaliation seems so disproportionate to the final trigger. You see a single spark, but they see the entire warehouse of fuel you have been helping them stack for months.
They are not reacting to what you just did. They are reacting to every single time you treated their kindness as a weakness. Watch for the physical signs of this internal pressure. One of the most telling indicators is the delayed reaction. If you insult a person and they do not react at all, but then you notice their behavior becomes slightly more robotic or their language becomes overly formal, you are witnessing the freezing of the mask. Their brain is rerouting all emotional energy into the prefrontal cortex to prevent a premature explosion. Another sign is the smile that does not reach the eyes, or a sudden, unexplained drop in their level of detail when they speak to you.
They are beginning to depersonalize you. You are no longer a friend or a colleague to them. You are a problem that needs to be solved, or a threat that needs to be neutralized. They are moving from a state of emotional engagement to a state of cold, analytical observation. This leads to the final secret before the breaking point, which is the loss of the moral compass. Most people are kept in check by their desire to be seen as a good person. But the nice person has already failed at this in their own mind because they feel like a fraud for hiding their resentment.
Once they accept that they are not the saint everyone thinks they are, the last barrier falls. They no longer care about being good, they only care about being effective. And because they have spent years observing your every move, their effectiveness is terrifying. But what exactly happens in the brain during the moment of the snap? How does the chemistry of the mind shift from submissive to predatory in a matter of seconds? In the next part, we will look at the neurobiology of the breaking point and the specific tactics the nice person uses to dismantle those who took them for granted.
The loss of a moral compass does not leave a person lost, it leaves them liberated. When the nice person finally discards the burden of being the good guy, they do not fall into chaos. Instead, they enter a state of high-functioning coldness. To understand this, we have to look at the first secret sign of the impending shift, which is the decoupling of empathy. There are two types of empathy. Affective empathy is when you feel what another person feels.
This is what usually keeps a nice person trapped. They cannot stand up for themselves because they feel your potential discomfort too deeply. But then there is cognitive empathy. This is the purely intellectual understanding of how another person thinks and what they value. When the shadow takes over, the brain performs a surgical strike on the affective empathy centers. The nice person stops feeling your emotions entirely, but their cognitive empathy remains sharper than ever. They see your fear, your confusion, and your pride, but they view these things like a mechanic looks at a faulty engine. They are no longer connected to your humanity. They are only interested in your mechanics. This shift allows them to be devastatingly precise. If they are your coworker, they do not just vent to HR. They wait until you are leading a high-stakes presentation to ask the one question they know you cannot answer, designed specifically to trigger your imposter syndrome in front of the entire executive board. They are not being mean. They are being efficient.
This leads to the second psychological reality, known as moral licensing. This is a phenomenon where the brain keeps a secret ledger of good and bad deeds. Because the nice person has spent years performing selfless acts, they feel they have accumulated a massive surplus of moral capital. In their mind, they have been so good for so long that they have earned the right to be monstrous. This is why their retaliation feels so justified to them. They are not the villain in their own story. They are the debt collector. They are finally cashing in all the times you were late, all the times you took credit, and all the times you used their kindness as a stepping stone. This sense of righteousness removes the natural brakes that keep most people from going too far. To them, destroying your reputation or your career is not an act of malice, it is a balancing of the books. You can spot this transition through a specific change in their communication style. Listen for the shift from personal language to objective observations. If a friend who used to say, "I feel hurt when you do that," suddenly starts saying, "Your behavior is inconsistent with the team goals," they are moving into the analytical phase. They are no longer trying to fix the relationship. They are documenting the failure. This is predictive processing at its most dangerous. They are calculating the most logical way to remove the source of their stress, and that source is you. The third secret is the weaponization of the safe space. Throughout your relationship with a nice person, you have likely shared your vulnerabilities. You told them about your rocky marriage, your financial anxieties, or the childhood trauma that still haunts you. You felt safe because they were nice, but the nice person's brain, fueled by hypervigilance, has stored every one of those vulnerabilities as a potential tactical advantage. When the prefrontal cortex stops suppressing the shadow, these secrets are pulled from long-term memory and weaponized. They do not just use this information to hurt you, they use it to destabilize your entire support system. They know which of your friends will turn on you if told a specific truth, and they know exactly how to frame a narrative that makes you look like the aggressor while they remain the victim. This brings us to the final indicator of the turn, which is the disappearance of the startle response. A person who is constantly trying to please everyone is usually jumpy and anxious. They are in a state of chronic high cortisol. But once the decision to retaliate is made, a strange calm settles over them. This is the activation of the periaqueductal gray, a part of the brain involved in both pain suppression and predatory behavior. They become focused, quiet, and unnervingly still. They have stopped reacting to you because they are now the ones setting the pace. They have moved from being the prey to being the hunter. The mask is not just slipping, it is being discarded because it is no longer useful. But what actually happens at the exact second the brain decides to cross the line? What is the chemical flood that turns a lifetime of patience into a single moment of absolute ruthlessness? In the final part, we will explore the neurobiology of the snap and the terrifying reality of the shadow unchained. The calm you see in a nice person who has finally reached their limit is not the peace of a monk, it is the cold clarity of a strategist. When the brain transitions from a state of chronic fawning to active retaliation, several hidden psychological secrets begin to manifest. The first secret you need to understand is the weaponization of social capital. Because this person has spent years building a reputation as the reliable, kind, and selfless one, they have a massive reserve of trust with everyone around you. When they decide to move against you, they do not need to shout or act aggressively. They use what is known as the halo effect. Since everyone perceives them as inherently good, any subtle negative information they leak about you is accepted as absolute truth. They might mention your mistakes with a tone of feigned concern, saying they are worried about your mental health or your performance. This is not kindness. It is a calculated strike on your social standing, using their reputation as a silencer. The second secret is the activation of the information vault. Think about the most personal things you have told this person. During your long lunches or late-night venting sessions, your brain felt safe because their hypervigilance made them excellent listeners. You were essentially uploading the source code of your vulnerabilities into their long-term memory. When the shadow takes over, their brain stops seeing these secrets as bonds of friendship and starts seeing them as points of failure. They know exactly which nerve to touch to make you spiral. They do not just attack your character, they attack your foundation. If you are a coworker, they will subtly point out the exact flaw in your project that you confessed you were nervous about. If you are a partner, they will use your deepest insecurities to make you feel small.
all while maintaining a calm, reasonable exterior that makes you look like the irrational one. This leads us to the most chilling sign of the turn, which is the linguistic shift into hyper-formalization.
In psychology, we see this as a form of emotional distancing. When someone who used to be warm and informal suddenly starts treating you like a stranger or a corporate entity, they are depersonalizing you. They have moved you from the category of a human being into the category of an obstacle. Their emails become brief, their tone becomes clinical, and they stop using your name in a friendly context. This is their prefrontal cortex exerting total control over their emotions. By removing the personal connection, they remove the empathy that used to keep their shadow in check. They are no longer interacting with you.
They are managing you out of their life. The fourth secret is the shift in dopamine rewards. Normally, a nice person gets a hit of dopamine from being helpful or receiving approval. But once the snap occurs, the reward circuitry in the brain undergoes a radical change. They begin to find satisfaction in the precise execution of a plan. The joy they once felt from helping you is replaced by the dark satisfaction of seeing you deal with the consequences of your own actions. This is often perceived as coldness, but it is actually a highly focused state of predatory flow.
They are not acting out of a hot, impulsive rage. They are operating with the quiet intensity of a hunter who has waited years for the perfect shot. You might notice their physical presence changes too. They stop making themselves smaller in the room. Their posture straightens. Their eye contact becomes uncomfortably steady. And the nervous habits they used to have, like fidgeting or forced laughing, vanish completely. This is the neurobiology of certainty. Their brain has stopped weighing the pros and cons of the conflict.
The decision has been made. They are no longer afraid of the fallout, because in their mind, you have already been deleted. But what is the actual catalyst that causes this permanent structural shift in the psyche? Is it a single moment of disrespect? Or is it a neurological tipping point where the brain simply can no longer process the cognitive dissonance? In the next part, we will analyze the final transition, the point of no return where the nice person does not just fight back, but permanently rewires their personality to ensure they are never the victim again. We will look at the long-term transformation of the shadow integrated and why the person who comes back from the snap is never the same person who went in.
The snap feels like a release, but it is actually the final collapse of a personality structure that was never sustainable. If you find yourself relating to the cold clarity of the retaliation or the heavy buildup of resentment, you are standing on a psychological fault line. The solution is not to become a villain, but to stop pretending to be a saint. In analytical psychology, we call this shadow integration. It is the process of acknowledging your capacity for malice so that you can control it, rather than being controlled by its suppression. When you own your shadow, you no longer need the mask of the nice person. You become a person with boundaries.
You move from being harmless to being virtuous. A person who cannot bite is not being peaceful. They are just a victim. A person who can bite but chooses to keep their teeth covered is the one who truly commands respect. Setting boundaries is not an act of aggression. It is an act of maintenance. It prevents the accumulation of the micro-traumas that lead to the psychological inversion we have discussed. You must learn to communicate your needs when they are small, so they do not become explosive.
This requires cognitive reframing. You have to stop seeing a no as a rejection of others and start seeing it as a protection of your own mental resources. By being honest about your limits, you stop the fawning response before it poisons your prefrontal cortex. You reclaim your agency and stop the cycle of fawning and fury. This creates a state of psychological stability where you are no longer a pressurized vessel, but a regulated system. I know how exhausting it is to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations. I know the silent scream that happens in your mind when you feel invisible despite doing everything right.
You deserve to be seen for who you actually are, not just for what you can provide for others. Integration is not about becoming a bad person. It is about becoming a whole person. It is about realizing that your strength does not come from your silence, but from your ability to speak your truth before the shadow has to speak it for you. You have the power to be the most formidable version of yourself without losing your heart. Thank you for going on this journey into the deep mechanics of the human psyche with me. If you saw yourself or someone you know in these signs, I want to hear your story.
What is the one sign or behavior that felt the most relatable to you? Drop a comment below and let us start a conversation about shadow integration. If this deep dive helped you understand your own mind or the people around you better, hit the like button and subscribe to join our community. I am Mac, and welcome to the Mac Bros. We are here to help you navigate the hidden layers of human nature so you can move from surviving to thriving. Until next time, stay aware and stay integrated.